Oh God, boys, that's a flipping hard question, that is.
Welcome to the Fall and Rise podcast. Today we are joined by Daniel Jervis. He is a two-time Olympic swimmer. Dan, can you please introduce yourself for us?
I'm Daniel. I'm a newly retired swimmer based in Swansea. This is where I live. This is where I'm from. Thank you guys for having me on the podcast. I'm looking forward to it.
As we mentioned, you're two-time Olympic swimmer. Can you talk a bit about how you got into swimming to start with?
Yeah, so I'm 29 now, and obviously, as I just said, I retired last year after Paris. But the year I was born in '96, my grandfather fell ill. He had a heart attack, and so for rehabilitation, swimming was what was prescribed because it's the healthiest sport I guess you can do. I'm a bit biased about that, but because it's weightless and you're using every part of your body, that is what they said to him to do. And so because I was so young, like I wasn't even one yet. Um, my grandparents, when they used to go swimming, they used to take me along, and my grandfather taught me to swim, and I loved it. I took to it like a duck to water, and yeah, I got my 10-meter badge when I was like 1 or 2. Like I absolutely loved it. That was before things got serious, of course. But yeah, that's how I started.
What did the transition look like for you from being a regular swimmer as a recreational hobby to going to the level at which you have now gone to go on and do?
Think I started off in I say I'm from Swansea. I'm from one of the valleys leading up to Swansea. So I don't even have a Swansea accent. But I'm from a village just outside Neath, called Resolven. And I used to train in a pool that was quite nearby. And it's just because, like, my sister is 3 years older than me, and so she used to swim, and so I used to watch her, and I used to be like, you always look up to your older siblings. I always used to be like, oh, I want to be like Rian and whatever. And yeah, I just got in, and I had a good group of friends around me. I had a really good team. I started off in Nexus Valley Swimming Club, which is still going strong. And yeah, it wasn't necessarily like when I was younger, I never used to, like, when I was that young, it was nothing serious. It was just fun. And I just always had a good group of friends around me. Training, it wasn't even like training. It was just fun, or, I mean, thinking back now, we were like doing training sessions, but at the time it's just what you do. And it's all I knew. And so when the people in my class in school weren't going swimming in the evenings, it was quite weird to me. I'm like, well, why? What else are you doing? But yeah, it was. I just kind of went through the ranks. Me and my group of friends, we kind of grew up together. And when I got to about 13 years old, like, I kind of outgrew that swimming club. I loved it, but I kind of wanted to take it to the next step. And that swimming club took me as far as I could possibly go there, and I loved it there. I really did. But then I moved to Neath Swimming Club, and I was there for 2 years, and that was great as well. And then after 2 years, I then had the opportunity to move to Swansea, where I was for the rest of my career. I think I was in Swansea for, I think it was 12 years or 13 years. And I went straight into the performance group. So I went straight to be coached by Adam Baker, who coached me to the both Olympics. And yeah, I loved it. It was hard. I mean, you live in Swansea, Jonah, you know what the weather is like. From October to March, you don't see the blue sky at all. But it's a beautiful place, and it is a great place to train as well.
Absolutely. How did you keep yourself motivated in those months where it's raining, it's cold, it's dark? How did you get up in the mornings to keep going?
I think you can ask Hayley Baker and Adam Baker about this. I probably moaned every single day. I used to turn up to training, and everyone talks about, you got to be positive in the group. Nah, I wasn't positive at 6 o'clock in the morning. Let's be honest. Like, I used to turn up, my face down to my knees. But what motivated me to get up every day is I knew if I wasn't doing it, my competitor was doing it. And swimming is such an individual sport where, like, I can only speak as a swimmer. Like, I've never really done rugby or football. at like a competitive level, like I can imagine you can kind of hide behind the rest of the team. So say now you're in a big final in football, all the other players could be having a great day, you could be having a bad day, yet your team can still win. You know, with swimming, if you don't prepare, you're in that pool on your own, and everyone is going to know that you ain't prepared well, or you're having an off day. And so that used to kind of get me up every morning. Yeah, and once I used to like the pool is Baltic, so once you dive into the pool, like you wake up like that, and yeah.
Wow. Obviously, you started swimming when you were very, very young and you've continued it all the way into your adulthood. How did you manage having a childhood and growing up and having a potentially a normal life with becoming such a high performing athlete?
I think for me, it's all I've ever known. So I don't feel as if I've missed out on things, especially when I was younger. Um, and like that group of friends that I had, and like friends come and go. But for me, it's just something I always knew I wanted to do. And I think, you know, you talk to a lot of like young athletes now, and they always say like, oh, when I get older, like I want to go to the Olympics. But I wasn't like that. I always used to say, and this sounds really cheesy, I always used to say like, when I go to the Olympics. There was never like a question like, oh, if I go. I was like, no, I'm gonna go. It's just something I'm gonna do. And it was like, I had that since I was probably 10. You know, before then, I didn't even know what the Olympics was. But you know, I remember being 10 years old and being like, yeah, when I go to the Olympics, you know, and that makes me sound as if I was quite cocky. I wasn't cocky at all as a kid. But it's just something I always knew I wanted to do. It's something I always knew I was going to do. And I was willing to give up kind of anything to do it. But like my family were great around me. I had the best support network I can ask for. And they never made me feel like I was missing out on things, because whenever I'd go to a competition, whenever I'd go training, they'd have to take me. So they'd be there every step of the way. Um, and plus, like, yeah, when I was younger, I had a good group of friends, but I had a good group of friends going right through to when I retired as well. Like, I had a great group. Um, what about you boys? Like, do you like, what's it like for you? Do you feel as if you've like missed out on anything?
I don't think so. No, I think I got to experience it all. How about you, Peter?
I think I'm a bit different within that I started taking my sport to a higher level from the age of 17 and I'm 19 now. For me, you are at that pinnacle point where you're sort of getting a bit older and you turn 18 all of a sudden and everyone's going out partying, drinking, clubbing. With some of the goals I had and I was so focused on achieving that I suppose you could say I sacrificed and missed out on that for a large period of time and
Yeah.
still, still do. But at the same time, if you're working towards something that's greater than the experience of going to a party, then does it really matter? And you come the other end of it, are you going to be proud and content with your choice? And I think I am. So yeah, I suppose you could say to most normal people it's a sacrifice, but if you're getting something out of that sacrifice, then it's not a sacrifice, it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
And it's an exchange of, yeah, it's interesting. I think it all depends, but for me, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, I think like I completely understand that. I think when I got to 18 and everyone started going out drinking, like I'm not a drinker at all. I'm very much a lightweight. But I was just like, I don't know, I just knew what I wanted, and like I was willing to like sacrifice everything. I think now that I've finished looking back, I'm kind of realizing what I missed out on. Like, for example, like my best friend got married and I was best man and I couldn't make the wedding because I was away. And I like, it was the Olympics, like it was a big competition, but like I still missed out on my best friend's wedding. And so I'm like, it's like now that I'm getting older, I'm kind of like reflecting a lot on my career. I'm thinking like it was amazing and I don't regret any of it, but there's so much that I did miss out on. And plus, like my school friends back home, you know, they start going out, and I mean, they start going out like 17 and stuff, and before then, and like they invite you in the beginning, and then it gets to a point where you say no so many times they just stop inviting you. And it's just like, it's not like they're not doing it in malice, it's just what it is. And I think like it's hard. It's hard. And I think that does draw a lot of people away from the sport.
It's interesting because you grow up with a group of friends and they're very important to you. Then along the way, like you say, they slowly slip away because you're moving on, but it's because you're moving on to bigger things. The friends in the circle you keep, they're different and potentially they're more at your level in terms of what you're doing. I've certainly found within myself that, of course, I still have very close friends from the past, but that's just because they were good people in the beginning. But now some of the people I'm surrounding myself with and I am fortunate enough to call friends are extremely extraordinary people within what they do. Just like I'm sure you have many friends who are high performers, high achievers, Olympians, etc.
Yeah. And it's weird because that group of friends, as you just said, like does change. And a lot of the friends that I do have in the Aquatics GB setup, like I don't see them often. Like, and when I was a swimmer and when I used to compete with them, it was rare that I used to see a lot of them. Like, yeah, I used to see them at Champs in April. I used to see them at Seti Collie when we used to go to Rome, one or two others, and then the big one in the summer. But I didn't used to train with them. Like, they're in Loughborough, Bath, Stirling. I'm in Swansea. And so for me, like it was great. Like we were good friends. I got on with everyone. But at the same time, there was a little bit of a distance because I only saw these people and they only saw me when we were at like a heightened mindset. Like we were there to perform. We were there to work. We weren't there to like socialize. Obviously, when the competition's over, you can socialize there and have a lot of fun. But until then, that's always the last day. Do you know? Yeah.
You've mentioned that you spent a lot of your time in Swansea under Adam and Hayley. How would you say that having good coaches like them helped you through the tough days?
Um, I think Hayley was never like my primary coach. She was always there because when I first moved to Swansea, she was, I think, head of Swim Swansea or Swansea Aquatics as it is now. And Adam was my primary coach. And obviously, they're husband and wife. So I used to see Hayley all of the time. But talking about Hayley, I always used to, I'm very much a home person. Like my family is, I know it sounds really cheesy, and this is probably for most people. My family is everything for me. Do you know, they used to, wherever I used to go, they used to be there. They used to travel to any competition. But Hayley, like when I used to go away and people, like you can't take your family, I used to look at Hayley as a little bit of like a mother figure. So if I had a problem with swimming, like my parents are brilliant. I love my parents, but they don't know anything about swimming when it comes to like training. They only see what I tell them. But Hayley knows it. You know, she knows everything about it. She probably knows more than me. And so if I had a problem in swimming or I needed some advice, Hayley would be the person I'd go to, whether it be here at home or the other side of the world. Now, Adam, he took me from a normal kid to going to 2 Olympics. And, you know, and like that relationship is it very much is like, obviously it's coach athlete, but when you get to a certain point and you go to so many countries together and you go through all these experiences together, it does change. And like it becomes like Adam was Adam knew me as an athlete better than I knew myself. Like he was the one that was like, no, you can be better in the next set, you know? And I was like, Adam, I'm knackered. And he was like, no, you ain't. And I was like, trust me, pal, I am. But then I would like, he would push me, you know? And, he was my, he was great. You know, he, how do I describe Adam? It's hard because like it's hard having to describe someone who I see a lot of the time. Um, he, he was great. You know, sometimes I'd walk into training and he'd be the best person. And then sometimes I'd walk into training and, you know this, if you've had coaches, sometimes you're just like, oh, they're the last person in the world that you want to see. And sometimes I just have to be like, Adam, today is not the day, you know? But he was great. And as I said, like he kind of coached me from 15 to 28 and he knew me better than I knew myself, and he knew when to push me and he knew when to back off, and I think he got it just right. Yeah.
Over the 13 years that Adam coached you, what would you say was the hardest set he ever gave you?
Oh, but we done a few. But I was a distance swimmer, and so some of the sessions I used to do were like mind numbing. I remember the one session that we done. It was 8/1000s best average, and I swam bad for about a month after it. I was like, I'm never doing that again, Adam, and we didn't. That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But one of the hardest sessions we used to do as well is 3100s, which is like such a like everyone does 3100s, and it used to kill me. Used to kill me. You know. What about you? What's the hardest session you've ever done?
Probably the 3100s.
Grim, and then
Yeah, I mean, it's especially when they like descend the time, that's when it's the worst. Like, what's your mindset going into a big competition where you're flying across the world? How do you adapt your mindset for that?
the pressure was always a lot more. I kind of used to approach every competition the same, whether it be the West Wales Championships or the World Championships. I used to approach it like, it's a competition. There's 7 other guys in the race. This pool is 50 meters long. My lane is exactly the same width in this competition as it is in the last competition, as it is back home in Swansea. It's water, like nothing really's changed. The only thing that changes is obviously like there's about 20,000 people watching it this time. The way I used to approach it is I'm a Christian, I pray. Have you seen Bruce Almighty? When the prayer, you've never seen Bruce Almighty? Peter, have you seen Bruce Almighty?
I haven't, unfortunately. I'm
Oh
sure
my
it's
gosh. Boys, you need to watch Bruce Almighty. So there's a part where he's like God and he's answering the prayers and the prayers are just coming up like that. That used to be me. I used to be like, God, please just get me through it. But like I used to approach it, I used to try to relax. Obviously I used to pray, as I just said, but I used to relax and I was quite talkative when I got nervous. And so I was probably a pain in the neck in marshalling because people would be sitting there trying to concentrate, not wanting to talk. And I used to be like, how's it going? And I want to talk because I used to get so nervous for my 1500. Not because of the race. I'm just nervous because I knew how much it was going to hurt. And I just kind of wanted to take my mind off it. But it was the way I approached it was just like any other race. It was a 1500. I've done it every day in training. Training's the hard bit. They always say training is 90% physical, 10% mental. And then in a competition, it flips. So it's 10% physical, 90% mental. And I learned that the hard way. I always used to bottle it, actually, when I used to go to these big competitions. Probably out of let's say I went to 10 major competitions, I did some bad, but I probably didn't perform as well as I deserved in about 7 of them because I used to get so nervous.
when you have those moments in those competitions where you feel as if that you didn't perform as well as you could have, do you have that setback mentally? What do you do, or where do you go to make sure you come back stronger and don't let it destroy you in some respects?
Well, those big competitions were usually at the end of season, and so I'm not saying I swam bad in every big competition. Like some big competitions I swam really well, but the competitions where I didn't perform well, I wouldn't talk about it. I wouldn't want to talk about it until I got back from summer. And then at the beginning of the new season in September or beginning of October, I'd sit down with my coach Adam. We'd just go through it, and we'd only go through it once. Because if it was a bad one, I wouldn't want to dwell on it, but I'd need to get it out of my system and talk about it a little bit. And we would talk what went wrong, what my mindset was going into the race, any other contributing factors, and what we can do about it next time. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, and as my career went on, I learned more about myself. I learned how to deal with things better. And I also learned that like having a psychologist is really, really helpful to athletes. Sometimes as I said earlier, my parents are brilliant, but they wouldn't know how to answer if I said, "Oh, Mum, you should have seen what it was like when I was standing in front of these 20,000 people and I was nervous." Like, she wouldn't know what to say, so you kind of need to talk to someone who knows a lot about that.
when you're doing these big competitions, like you say, 20,000 people are looking at you, thousands and hundreds and millions more at home. How do you handle that pressure from the big crowds and also the media attention?
Well, I used to get really, really nervous in smaller competitions as well. I tell you, one competition I used to get really nervous in is Arena League. Especially the Arena League finals, because I knew when when I was on that block, everyone knew who I was, and so I remember thinking, if I muck up, not only am I letting myself down, I'm embarrassing myself in front of all these people, and I'm letting my team down, because obviously Arena League's all about points. So I used to get really nervous there, but dealing with the pressure, I think I used to. Uh, I'm very much a visual learner, and so I learn by like watching people and kind of like like mirroring what they doing. And someone I used to watch who is a fantastic example for this is Adam Peaty. Adam Peaty's already won the race before he's even got in the water. Because you look at him, like he stands on the block. We talk about this in Aquatics GB, but it's the arena skills, and he ticks every box for that. So he stands on the block, and he looks out into the arena, whether it's 1,000 people or 20,000 people, and he breathes it in, and like he looks like an absolute machine anyway. But then he dives in, and like he's already built up all that energy, and he can just turn it on. Sometimes I used to walk out in front of that many people, and you feel about that big, and you're like, oh my God, and it can kind of eat you up. It's all about how you kind of like respond to it. So I tried using earphones in and playing music. Sometimes I used to just be like, right, when am I ever going to have this moment again? And so you kind of want to live in the moment. And sometimes that can get a bit too much. I learned that in I think it was 2019, we were in Fukuoka in Japan. And I was like, right, I'm just going to enjoy the moment. I was nervous for the race. And I was just like, I'm going to enjoy it. And I walked out and I heard the crowd, and I was like, oh gosh, this is too much for me. It was too big. And it's from terrible. And so then I learned for the next one then not to do that.
Your first Olympics was Tokyo, which had no crowd. Can you talk about the difference between walking out of the call room at Tokyo compared to Paris?
Yeah, they were very, very different. They were both amazing, and I'm really glad I got to experience both of them. But walking out in Tokyo, I know everyone says there was no crowds, and don't get me wrong, it was a 20,000 seater stadium, and it was humongous. But it wasn't silent in there because the athletes were allowed to go, and I raced on the last day. My final was on the last day, and so everyone who'd finished swimming was there. So there was about 3,000 people in there, and it was very echoey. It was a huge room, and I remember thinking, and this is probably one of two best moments in my career. I remember standing behind the boards before you walk out where your name comes up. And I remember them saying, please welcome the athletes for the men's 1500 meter freestyle Olympic final. And I was putting my hat on at the same time. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm from a small village in South Wales. I was like, what am I doing? But walking out into that, like I could hear my team, sometimes because it's so loud in there, you can't hear individual like groups of people. Then I could specifically hear where Great Britain was sat and who was there, because I could just look right at them, and they all had big British flags, and that was incredible, and I swam. That was the high, like I finished that race, the highest I've ever been ranked in the world. And then going on to Paris, which was a completely different experience. It was a 20,000 seat arena, and I think every single seat was full. And I walked out, and I didn't have a good build up to Paris, which we'll talk about later. But like, I remember, like, I've been nervous all my career, but I remember before my race in Paris, I was petrified. And like, being nervous is good. Nerves are good, but being petrified, that's not good. And it was not good for me. And I walked out, and as I said earlier, I felt that big. And I remember, like, I knew it was my last race, and I was trying to take it in. And I remember just thinking, oh, I was so in the moment and I was so in the crowd that I was exhausted. I was exhausted, and I just remember thinking to myself, "Oh, I got to do 1,500 meters, and it's not exactly a splash and dash." So I was like, "This is going to be a long race," and it was. But it was, yeah, it was. They were still both amazing experiences, and I'll never ever take anything away from that. But they were just very different, and they were, yeah, yeah.
You mentioned your build up to Paris wasn't the best. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So, um, we so every 4 years it's the Commonwealth Games, and in 2014 I had my breakthrough swim. It was Glasgow. I won my bronze medal. It came from, like, I didn't expect it, and I won a bronze medal. And then in 2018 I won a silver medal in Australia, and then in Birmingham 2022 I was like, this is my year, and I was in the best form of my life. I was fitter than ever. I was more excited than ever. I was loving swimming more than ever. And obviously COVID had just happened, and obviously COVID was terrible, but it did give me, and like, swimming stopped, and obviously the Olympics was postponed, but it gave me the chance to step back and kind of take a breather and be a normal person for a little bit. I mean, nothing was normal during that time, but I was as normal as any other person on the planet. But it gave me a chance to step back, take a breather, and be like, right, let's start again, and that was the best thing that could have happened for me. And so going into 2022, I was fresh. I was fresh off an Olympic year. I was fresh off, the year before, having, 6 months, 7 months out of the water. I was great, and I was very fortunate. I never caught COVID up until 2 weeks before the competition, before the Commonwealth Games. And I was going to the Commonwealth Games ranked number 1. I was like, this is my, and I was never ever big headed as a swimmer, but inside I was like, this is my thing. This is my time. And obviously, like, are you both English? So, like, it's probably exactly the same for you guys, but for Wales, and obviously I grew up in South Wales, I'm very Welsh. Commonwealth Games is the highest competition I can do for Wales. It's the highest competition you can do for England in swimming. And it was my opportunity to have my Welsh national anthem played for me. And yeah, as I said, I caught COVID and I had to pull out. I swum day 1, which was the 400 freestyle, and I scraped through to the final, and I was absolutely exhausted. Obviously, I was negative going to the games, but you still have the after effect of COVID, and I was exhausted. And I came 8th, and which, it's not a bad result, but I wanted a medal in the 400. And then going into the 1,500, which was, I think it was day 4, day 5. I remember the day before I was going to a practice swim session, and I was swimming down the pool, and I'd done 2,000 meters easy swimming, and I finished and I thought, I am absolutely exhausted. And so the day before my race, which I wanted to win, which I thought I was going to win a gold medal, I had to pull out of the games, and I was devastated. And it sounds exaggerated, but it honestly felt like someone in my family had died, because I was grieving it. It's all I'd ever wanted was that anthem played for me. And all I ever wanted was that gold medal. And this opportunity had been taken away from me with something that wasn't my fault. And anyway, the reason why the build up to Paris was hard was because after that year, not only was it really hard to get back in the pool, for the year after the Commonwealth Games, I've got to be very careful what I say now, but I was bullied really bad. And it was awful. It was awful. It was the worst year. It was the worst year of my life going into 2023 Worlds. And there was nothing I could do about it. And I was very much on my own, And I'm not saying that to, like, for people to feel sorry for me. The reason why I'm saying that is because it was the worst year of my life, but it kind of sounds so cheesy, but it made me kind of like the man I am today. And during that time, there's so many negatives that were happening, but there's so many positives I can take from it as well. As I just said, it's made me into the man I am today. I learned in that time who wasn't there for me. but more importantly, I learned who was there for me. Do you know? And it wasn't people you'd expect, you know? I mean, mum and dad were there. Like, they kind of were my rocks during that time. They got me through it. And it was only a few days ago, actually, I was watching my interview. So it was Trials 2023 for Worlds. And I won, and I was having the interview. And like, I'm an emotional person anyway. And I sat and I was having my interview in front of the crowd, and I cried. And I think, thinking back now and watching the video the other day, I was thinking to myself, I really was going through it. Like, it was like proper rock bottom. And I think, you know, I went to 2023 Worlds and I struggled. I was just exhausted from being mentally battered. That's what I felt like. And going into then 2024, I knew I wanted to finish on an Olympics. I knew I could make the Olympics, and I basically limped to Paris. That's what it was. And so, like, I didn't perform as well as I deserved in Paris. I didn't perform anywhere near in what I did when I was in Tokyo. But for me, qualifying for that Olympics was my Olympics. That was my Olympic gold, qualifying. And Paris was just like, Paris for me was just kind of just a bit of a celebration of my career. And for me to just sign off with a smile on my face and just be like, I've done it, you know? That's why it was a hard build up.
You certainly left it on a good note, but it seems you've transitioned your career into commentating. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm having the time of my life. So my dream in my life, and it's always what I've wanted to do, is I want to be a broadcaster. I want to be a presenter. I want to be a broadcaster of anything. And obviously I love swimming. After Paris, I did think to myself, I am never, ever going near a swimming pool again. And then the following April, I was asked to come back and talk at the British Championships. And I was quite nervous to walk back in because I hadn't seen my friends for a long time. The last time I was in a swimming atmosphere, I felt like a broken man. And so I was walking into this pool and I was thinking to myself, oh, how am I going to feel? And I felt like it was just nice being back. I saw my old friends, and like, don't get me wrong, I couldn't think of anything worse than getting back in the water. And when we were commentating at the time, I was sat next to Andy Jameson, and he was saying, "Do you miss it?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "Do you wish you were doing this 1500?" I was like, "Not at all." You know, I could see how tired the boys were, and I was like, "I know that feeling way too much." But I loved being back in the atmosphere. I loved seeing everyone. I loved talking about it. There's so much information I know about swimming. And I just like telling people back home. And I was sat next to, obviously, Andy Jameson and Paul Noble, who was commentating on the para events. And I was asking him so many questions about the para swimmers, about the classifications, because I was just as interested as anyone back home. So I just loved finding out about the sport, and just like, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I loved it. And, you know, you'll see me again in April in London. I'm hoping to be at the Commonwealth Games, Europeans next year, commentating, or, to be honest, I will do whatever. I'll be like, just send me there and make me work. I don't care. I'll get the tea. I love it. I love it.
We've spoken a bit about the mental health side of the sport. Would you say there was any of the Olympic blues after your both Olympic?
Um, I found coming back from 2014 quite tough, because I just turned 18. I just won a Commonwealth medal. I won a Commonwealth medal before I won a medal at nationals. Like, it was quite a quick trajectory that year. And I think it was, as I said, I went from a normal swimmer to that. Going away for summer and then coming back, people expected me to do the same, you know. And this was people like back in my home village. They were like I'm from a small village called Resolvan. I love it. I'm so proud of it. But because it's a small village and no one really knows a swimmer, I was treated like Andy Murray. Don't get me wrong, I loved it. But with that comes a lot of pressure. And when you perform well, it's brilliant. Everyone celebrates. When you perform bad, everyone knows. You know, and people are the first ones to say, "Oh, well, what happened there?" And, I just felt an immense amount of pressure after that competition. And I wouldn't really say that was blues. I was just like, there was just a change in, I guess, my life. Now, coming back from 2018, obviously the games were held in Australia. Have you ever been to Australia? Have you been?
Jonah has,
No.
I haven't.
It's amazing. And I had the blues coming back from there. I don't think I was missing the competition. I was just missing Australia. Like I was, I was coming back to Wales, and don't get me wrong, I love Wales, but it was raining, and I didn't leave Australia raining. So I think I did have a bit of blues there, and Tokyo, it was weird coming home because of COVID, we couldn't stay for the closing ceremony or anything. So I think 48 hours after I was last day. So 48 hours after my Olympic final, I was walking down the bread aisle in Tesco's and thinking to myself, I kind of just wanted to turn to the person next to me, and I was like, you should have seen what's just happened in my life. But you can't really have that conversation with people. So you have blues after that. But after Paris, I didn't have anything. I was so exhausted from the sport. I was just glad to be out of it at that time. I love being back in it now, but at the time I was just like, oh, I can't even talk about it. Like, when you go to competitions, do you get like blues and stuff?
I don't think so. I like in competing, so I always look for like the next race. But yeah, I've never really had the blues or anything. Throughout your career, you must have done thousands of training sessions. How did you incorporate strength and conditioning to prevent injury?
So in Swansea, we had a PT coach, a gym coach, Spencer. He's brilliant. He still works for the university now. You'll see him at any big competition. And he's great, When I left, I kind of just said to him, well, I didn't need to say this. He just done it. I just left it all to him. And so I'm not a gym person at all. And since finishing swimming, I'm trying to become one. I'm failing at it, but I'm trying to go to the gym. But when I was a swimmer, because I was a distance swimmer, I never really done a lot of weights. Like I was always injury prevention, band work. We'd lift some weights, but nothing to what the sprinters would be lifting, because as a distance swimmer, you don't want big muscles, because like it looks great, don't get me wrong, but the bigger your muscles are, the longer you have to carry that through the water. And so that's why when you look at marathon runners, marathon swimmers, distance swimmers, that's why we always got quite like a smaller, thinner build, slimmer build. But I was never really injured because I made sure, and it was drilled into me when I was younger, like make sure you get your pre-pool and post-pool right. So every single day, the Swim Wales High Performance Centre, we are made to be there between 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We are made to be there at 2:30. And don't be late. I was always a bit late, but try not to be late. And you got half an hour pre-pool. That means you warm all your muscles up. When you dive into the water, you're already halfway through your warm-up. And post-pool, I'd say, is just as important. Say now we've just done 8 1,000s. If you just leave and go home after that, I ain't going to be able to walk the next day. And so I prioritize, stretching my hamstrings. I think I probably got the tightest hamstrings ever. I always have, but I have to stretch them, stretch my arms, stretch my shoulders, stretch my neck. Just because, like if I got injured, then my competitor might not be injured. They can be training and I can't, But so, I say all that. I was also fortunate. Like you see these athletes who did do as much pre-pool and post-pool as me and do get injured. Like I think it's just down to the individual athlete. But I was very fortunate. But have you guys been injured? Like, do you get injured?
Like I've had heart stuff, but that's it. Like Daniel, we ask all of our guests 3 questions. Our first one is, who inspired you?
I think the obvious answer would be like Michael Phelps, and I think he is everyone's idol in swimming. So probably him, but also people like my parents. They are lovely, lovely people, and they are very good Christian people, and they're nice and they're well respected of where I'm from. And they work hard. You know, my dad owns his own paint and decorating business, which I work for now. I've been traveling, so now that I'm home and trying to get more money, I work for my dad, so I might be covered in paint. But yeah, they work very hard, and I think when I was younger, seeing that as a young kid and thinking to myself, well, to get what I want, I need to work hard. You know, where no matter what aspect of life that is, whether it's training, whether it's in a job or whatever. It was my mum and dad, and as I said just now, they are genuinely lovely people. You know, they're easy to talk to, they're friendly, they're fun, and just, you know, I've always looked to my parents and think to myself, that's exactly who I want to be like.
The second question we have for you is, if your younger self could see you now, what would they say?
So what would my younger self say about me now?
Yeah.
What would my younger self say about me now? Um, oh God, I don't know. I don't know. Just like, I know what I would tell my younger self, but what my younger self, I don't know. I don't know, boys. Sorry for that. I don't know.
It's fine. Okay. Well, in that case, what would you say to your younger self?
I would say to my younger self, stand up for yourself a little bit more. I think throughout my career, I've tried to have this, like, I want to be liked. I wanted to be seen as the nice guy. And I think in doing that, which is great. In doing that, I think a lot of people do see you as someone they can easily walk over. And in the past, that's happened to me. And I think as I've got older, when, you know, I've learned you can still be a really nice guy, but stand up for yourself and be able to say, no, that's not okay. I'm not happy with that. I wish I'd known that a little bit younger. Yeah. Yeah. And also just like, it's just like, I can only speak as a swimmer, but it's just swimming. Like, no one's gonna die. Like, if you don't swim well, no one's gonna die. Like, who cares? Like, thinking back now, who actually cares? I mean, me, but
Our third question, message for the listeners.
oh, I wish you'd given me that before we started this. I'd have come up with something good. A message for the listeners would just be, oh God, boys, that's a flipping hard question, that is. Something I would say to, I guess, a specific group of people, which would probably be the families or friends of athletes, would be, no one is tougher on an athlete than themselves. I remember I was my worst critic. And so, like, no one had to tell me when I got out of a pool that I didn't swim well enough or I didn't do a gym session good enough. You know, I knew myself and I used to beat myself up. And so this is something I always credit my parents for, is they were so good at, when I swam well, they would lift me up. And I said this in my retirement post, that when I swam well, they held me up, but or they like cheered and shouted about it. And then when I didn't swim well and things didn't go my way, they'd hold my hand and they'd be like, you'll get it next time, you know? And so that's kind of what I would say to people who are listening and who know an athlete or, you know, are in close proximity to an athlete, would just be like, just know that they're already feeling it 10 times what anyone else is. Yeah. And I guess for someone who's going through a hard time right now, like at one point in my career, it's all like, as I said, like I'm a crier. Sometimes it's all right to just walk. I think some people always try to put a positive spin on everything. And sometimes it is just a really bad situation. Sometimes it's just like, oh, I can't find a positive in this. But, and some people are always like, yeah, but think about this, think about that. And sometimes it's just good if you're in a hard situation, be in it, you know, and you will come out of it. You know, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's something I realized when I was going through it, is when people were saying, oh yeah, but this, that, the other, I was like, it's a really bad situation I'm in. and I just have to deal with this. And then when I've dealt with it, it's over. It'll blow over, and I'll be back.
Beautiful. Daniel, thank you for coming on the podcast. Thanks for giving us your time, your energy. Amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Boys, thank you very much for having me.